There is an old saying, not everything that is sacred should be shown, and not everything that is shown is sacred. A woman, like nature, holds within her the power of creation, transformation, and destruction. She is a force not to be explained, but to be experienced. But just as the ocean doesn't reveal all its depths to the surface, a woman too must keep certain things hidden, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Now, when we say hide, we are not talking about deception. We are talking about protection. We are talking about the sacredness of inner spaces. Not everything precious should be placed on the street corner. So what are these three things a woman should always keep hidden from everyone? Let's look at them, not as rules, but as gentle reminders. Certainly. Here's an expanded version of her inner fire in the same style without a subtitle or conclusion. There is a fire within every woman, not the kind that rages uncontrollably, but the kind that glows quietly in the center of her being. This fire is her desire, her longing, her potential to become something far greater than the world expects of her. It is not merely ambition or passion, it is the silent flame of knowing that she is meant for more, that she holds within her the essence of life itself. But this fire is not meant for display. It is not a torch to be carried through the streets, announcing its presence. No, it is meant to be tended like a sacred lamp in a temple, steadily, quietly, with reverence. Because when that fire is exposed too early or too loudly, people either try to blow it out, steal its warmth, or worse, misunderstand it entirely. In a world that demands constant expression, to withhold something is power. To guard your deepest longing is wisdom. This fire, when kept within, becomes your strength. It fuels your actions without needing to be spoken. It becomes a quiet current beneath your words, your steps, your choices. It makes you magnetic, not because of what you show, but because of what you withhold. There will be those who try to ask, what do you want? What drives you? Smile gently and keep walking. You do not owe anyone your fire. If you give it too easily, they will play with it like a toy. But if you hold it close, it will become the force that shapes mountains and moves the heavens. It is not suppression, it is sacred containment. Like the womb holds life, your inner fire must be held with the same sanctity. Protected, nurtured, and allowed to grow in its own time. Not everything beautiful must be explained. Not every light needs a witness. Some are meant only for the divine to see, and in that silent flame you rise, not loudly, but unshakably, certainly. Here's the expanded section on her emotional wounds, continuing in the same poetic, introspective, Sadhguru-style voice. A woman's heart is not made of stone. It is made of rivers. Sometimes still, sometimes wild, always deep. Along the journey of life, it collects scars, quiet ones, loud ones, hidden ones. Wounds not always caused by cruelty, but often by carelessness. Words that cut, trusts that broke, expectations that dissolved like mist. But these wounds are not to be displayed like medals of survival. The world, you see, does not always look at pain with compassion. Often it looks with curiosity, sometimes with judgment. Sometimes it doesn't look at all. Emotional wounds, when freshly shared, become entertainment for some, ammunition for others. They can be twisted, misinterpreted, or reduced to a story that doesn't honor the depth from which it came. Healing, therefore, is not a group activity. It is not to be shouted from rooftops. It is an intimate ritual between you and your own soul. When you bleed in silence, it is not weakness, it is sacredness. You are not hiding your pain. You are protecting it from hands that are not gentle enough to hold it. Just like you wouldn't open your diary to a stranger, your emotional world deserves discernment. Who you let into that space should be chosen with the same care as who you let into your home. There is strength in vulnerability, yes, but only when it is a conscious offering, not when it is taken by force or drawn out by pressure. A woman should know the power of silence, because when she chooses to share, it must come not from a need to be heard, but from the fullness of having already understood herself. Pain becomes wisdom only when it is allowed to settle, allowed to breathe. Not every ache needs a stage, not every tear needs an audience. Let your wounds heal under the moonlight, not the spotlight. And when they do, they will not only cease to hurt, they will begin to glow quietly from within. Of course, here's the expanded reflection on her spiritual process in the same contemplative, elegant tone. There is a space within a woman that no one should touch, not even with words. It is the space where her spirit stirs, where silence speaks louder than thought, where she meets something beyond name, form, or identity. Her spiritual process is not a performance. It is not an idea to be explained or a belief to be defended. It is a journey so intimate that even she may not yet have words for it. In this world of noise where everything must be shared, liked, and broadcasted, the most powerful experiences are the ones that remain untouched by public eyes. What is sacred loses its sanctity the moment it is exposed to the marketplace of opinions. A woman who understands this guards her inner evolution like a flame in the wind, shielded not because it is weak, but because it is precious. The blossoming of consciousness within her is not something to be flaunted. It is not for validation nor for approval. Whether she is chanting in the quiet corners of her room, whether she is dancing in surrender beneath the moon, or simply watching her breath with awareness, these moments are not for show. They are encounters with the divine, and the divine needs no witness. She may smile more, speak less. She may detach from drama, grow quieter in chaos. This is not aloofness, it is alignment. As she deepens in her inner work, she becomes less interested in explaining herself and more interested in simply being. Let that be. Because the moment you try to speak of the infinite, you shrink it into words too small. The moment you try to display your awakening, it loses its fragrance. Real spiritual growth makes you invisible to the noise, but deeply visible to truth. A woman should hide her spiritual process not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because when the seed is still sprouting, you do not dig it up to show its roots. You wait, you water, you let the sun and soil do their quiet work. And when it blooms, it does not ask for applause. It simply becomes a garden. Certainly, here's the expanded reflection on power lies in the unknown. In the same mystical and meditative tone, there's a strange human tendency to want to define everything, explain everything, understand everything. But the moment you become fully known, you become predictable, and the moment you're predictable, the world begins to shape you instead of you shaping the world. A woman who keeps nothing to herself becomes easy to read, easy to reach, and eventually easy to control. But when something about her remains just out of reach, just slightly veiled, it creates a different kind of presence. Not a performance, not manipulation, but a quiet sovereignty. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it simply refuses to be figured out. The unknown holds a magnetic energy. The stars are powerful because we cannot touch them. The ocean commands reverence, not just for its beauty, but because of the mystery beneath its surface. Likewise, when a woman allows part of herself to remain unexplained, she taps into that same current of natural power. When you hold back your full map, people cannot navigate you. They cannot reduce you to a pattern, a label, a story. They must meet you moment by moment, aware, attentive, a little humbled by what they do not know. That's where influence lives, not in noise, but in presence. The unknown is not a void, it is a field of potential. And when you stay rooted in it, when you refuse to expose every thought, every plan, every feeling, you remain connected to your own source of strength. People may wonder, what is she thinking? Where is she going? What is she capable of? Let them. A woman who understands the power of the unknown does not fear silence. She does not explain every decision. She does not unravel herself at the first invitation. Instead, she smiles with the wisdom of the unseen and walks with the calm of someone who holds entire galaxies behind her eyes. Because in a world obsessed with exposure, she chooses mystery, and in doing so, she becomes unforgettable, absolutely. Here's the expanded passage on mystery as a dimension of beauty in that same poetic inward-looking voice. There is a kind of beauty that fades the moment it is over-explained. Like a butterfly caught and pinned under glass, it can no longer fly and its magic dissolves. A woman, too, is not meant to be entirely understood. Her beauty is not in being an open book, but in being a sacred text written in a language only the worthy take time to learn. Mystery is not about secrecy, it is about depth. It is not hiding something out of fear, but holding something out of grace. When everything is revealed too soon, too easily, it loses value. What is rare, what is slightly veiled, what invites curiosity without offering answers, this is what stirs the soul. We live in a time where clarity is over-glorified, but there is a clarity that blinds and a mystery that awakens. The moon is beautiful not just because of her glow, but because she never shows her full self at once. The forest is enchanting not just for its trees, but because of the shadows between them. Likewise, a woman becomes captivating when she is not all surface, when something in her cannot be reached, only felt. Mystery is what gives beauty its timelessness. It is what makes someone linger in your mind long after they've left the room, not because of what they said, but because of what you sense, what you couldn't quite name. A woman who preserves a part of herself, who doesn't rush to share her every thought, her every layer, doesn't become distant, she becomes magnetic. She holds space. She invites wonder, and in that wonder there is reverence, not for what she shows, but for what she silently carries. The most beautiful art isn't just seen, it is experienced. And the most beautiful women are not simply admired, they are felt, remembered, not for their appearance, but for the atmosphere they create. Because mystery is not the opposite of intimacy. It is what makes intimacy sacred. Of course, here's the expanded section on not every opinion deserves an answer, delivered in that calm, grounded, Sadhguru-like tone. There will always be voices, some loud, some subtle. People will have opinions about your choices, your body, your path, your silence, your fire. Some will offer them as advice, others will wrap them in concern. A few may even sound like love, but underneath it all, there's a simple truth. Not every opinion deserves a seat at your inner table. We often waste so much energy trying to explain ourselves to those who are not really listening, trying to justify our journey to those who have never walked our path. It's a draining game because people don't always want to understand, they want to define. And if you give in, you'll find yourself shaped by the expectations of those who never saw your essence to begin with. A wise woman learns early. You do not need to respond to everything. You do not need to correct every misunderstanding. Silence is not weakness, it is a boundary. When you stay rooted in your own knowing, the need to defend, convince, or prove begins to fall away. You see, the tree does not explain itself to the wind. The river does not pause to justify its direction. In nature, everything simply is, and that is its power. A woman grounded in her truth is like that. When someone says, "I think you should," she smiles, perhaps nods, and keeps walking, not from arrogance, but from clarity. Because when you know who you are, you do not have to argue with those who don't. Sometimes the greatest response is no response at all. Let them talk, let them wonder, let them create stories if they must. Your job is not to manage their perception, it is to live your truth so fully, so deeply, that their noise can't touch it. Remember, a queen does not rise from her throne every time a dog barks. She remains still, composed, not because she is better, but because she knows what matters and, most importantly, what doesn't, certainly. Here's the refined and expanded section on vulnerability should be a choice, not a habit. In the same introspective and grounded tone in vulnerability, but only when it is intentional. When you offer your truth from a place of clarity, it becomes a bridge. But when vulnerability becomes automatic, unconscious, or constant, it stops being a gift and starts becoming a leak. A woman's tenderness is sacred. Her emotions, her stories, her wounds, these are not public property. They are not meant to be handed out like samples to anyone who shows a flicker of interest. Not everyone deserves access to your softness because not everyone knows how to hold it without breaking it. When you make a habit of exposing your inner world too easily, you risk giving people tools they haven't earned the right to carry. Tools they may misuse, not out of malice, but simply because they don't understand their weight. And sometimes even the most well-meaning ones can turn your vulnerability into a story, a label, a limitation. You are not meant to be endlessly open. Even the sky closes itself with clouds. Even the most vibrant flower folds in the dark. Real strength is not in constant openness. It's in knowing when to open and when to stay silent, when to let someone in and when to keep the door gently closed. Vulnerability should be a conscious offering, like the lighting of a lamp, not a flickering candle left out in the wind. You don't need to be seen to be real. You don't need to be understood to be whole. Some parts of you are for you alone, unspoken, unshared, quietly held with dignity. When you choose your vulnerability with care, it becomes intimacy. When you offer it without thought, it becomes exhaustion. So protect your softness, guard your depth. Be open but not exposed, because a woman who knows when to speak and when to remain silent holds a power that cannot be shaken. Of course, here's the expanded reflection on the feminine is meant to flow, not to be measured, in the same poetic, intuitive, and deeply reflective voice. The feminine is not a formula, it is a rhythm. It cannot be charted, contained, or explained in straight lines. Like water, it moves in curves. Like the moon, it waxes and wanes. Like the wind, it arrives without warning and leaves without apology. But the modern world, in its obsession with control, tries to measure her. It asks, how productive were you today? Why are you feeling this way? Why can't you stay consistent? And slowly, without realizing, a woman starts to doubt her own flow. She begins to mistrust her intuition, to silence her cycles, to turn her softness into something linear, efficient, explainable, predictable. But she was never meant to be measured. The feminine is not a clock, it's a tide. It moves with life, not against it. It rests when it needs to. It creates in bursts. It feels deeply. It pauses without guilt. And in that very flow, there is wisdom, there is intelligence, a different kind, not born of logic, but of alignment. When a woman allows herself to flow, she returns to her nature, not lazy, not unstable, but alive. She no longer forces herself into boxes built for machines. She moves as life moves, sometimes still, sometimes fierce, always true. To flow is not to be lost, it is to be in tune with something bigger than the calendar, deeper than the surface. A woman who embraces her flow becomes magnetic, not because she pushes, but because she aligns. She listens, she trusts the timing of things. She stops performing and starts being. Let her cry when she feels. Let her glow when she's full. Let her rest without guilt. Let her change without warning. That is not confusion, that is creation, because the feminine, at her essence, is not meant to be managed. She is meant to be honored. She is meant to be felt. She is meant to flow, certainly. Here's the expanded reflection on hiding is not weakness, it's preservation, in the same gentle, soulful, and grounded voice. In a world that worships visibility, hiding is often misunderstood. We are told to be seen, to be loud, to stay relevant, to constantly express and expose. But there is a kind of strength in stepping back, a quiet power in not being everywhere, in not saying everything, in not showing all that you are. Hiding is not weakness, it is preservation. It is the instinct of the sacred to protect itself. Just as a seed stays buried before it becomes a tree, just as the moon cloaks herself in shadow before she returns in full light, a woman too must know when to retreat, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Not everything is meant for display. Some things need the dark to grow. Some parts of you need silence, solitude, and time. Not an audience. A woman who hides herself is not lost. She is listening, gathering, transforming. She is not missing, she is becoming. And when she returns, it will not be for approval. It will be because she has ripened in her own stillness, not rushed by the noise of the world. There is a kind of beauty that only blooms behind the scenes, a kind of healing that only happens when no one is watching. The caterpillar does not turn into a butterfly under the spotlight. It does so inside a cocoon, unseen, unbothered. You do not owe the world your constant presence. You do not have to explain your quiet seasons. Disappear when you need to. Protect your process. Guard your energy like sacred fire, because what is forming within you is not for consumption, it is for creation. A woman who knows how to hide when the time is right also knows how to rise when the time is true. And that kind of power, it does not shout, it arrives, certainly. Here's the expanded reflection on: a woman is not a puzzle to be solved, but a universe to be revered in the same mystical, reverent, and poetic tone. There is a mistake the world often makes. It tries to figure her out. It looks at a woman like a puzzle, a riddle, a problem to be solved, as if her moods must make sense, as if her silence needs translation, as if her softness is a weakness or her strength is a threat. But a woman was never meant to be solved. She is not a code. She is not a sequence of behaviors to be analyzed. She is not a formula to be cracked or a pattern to be predicted. She is a universe. And a universe is not studied with logic alone. It is approached with wonder, with awe, with the humility of someone who knows they will never fully grasp it and doesn't need to. Within her live galaxies of feeling, constellations of memory, storms of intuition, and skies of stillness. She may be light today and thunder tomorrow, not because she is unstable, but because she is alive, in tune with something far greater than rules and roles. To revere her is to witness her, not to shrink her complexity, not to define her by her past, not to expect her to be the same each time you look. It is to hold space for her unfolding without needing to interrupt it. The mind wants clarity, the soul wants depth, and if you meet her only with the mind, you will keep asking, what does she want? Why is she like this? But if you meet her with presence, you will stop asking and start listening, not just to her words, but to her energy, her pauses, her becoming. A woman is not a project. She is a presence. She doesn't need to be simplified. She needs to be seen. And once you stop trying to understand her, you might finally begin to experience her.